Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your talks. We got a bunch of questions coming in via the chat, as well as questions from Twitter and messages I'm receiving. So I'm going to dive in with kind of a few questions for Harry. Harry, is there a news source that you use for staying up to date on these hacks?
I think it makes sense to kind of just look at a few sources if possible. In general, it's always good to follow the general crypto news sites are always good for kind of saying, you know, when hacks have occurred and things like that. Open Zeppelin have a really good forum whenever smart contract exploits occur as well, where they kind of go into the detail of exploits and kind of see how they happen, why they happen and things like that. So yeah, they're kind of two general places that I kind of keep an eye on personally.
Okay, and any ones that you want to call out by name?
Yeah, so Open Zeppelin forums definitely a good place to kind of keep an eye on.
Okay, awesome. Let's jump over to Zak. What are the biggest challenges that new smart contract developers should anticipate?
So I find thinking in terms of blockchain concepts can be really difficult, even for traditional developers at first. So really knowing how blockchains work, everything's kind of weird and asynchronous, you know, blocks come in certain times. So really understanding what's going on in the back there, like at the blockchain level, how the blocks are made, can really help you with some sticky points in your developer journey.
Awesome. And then let's go to Alex and Milena quick. So this is a little bit of a more philosophical question of should people be able to have multiple identities, or like what's the mental model about identities that folks should have?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Technically, even using game theory or something like this, we cannot prevent people from having very different skills. So, for example, you know, there are people that are extremely talented in mathematics as well as in music or in poetry that are very different disciplines. So what we can ensure, you know, going towards a sort of standardized model for identities is that it's hard to maintain multiple identities in order to get a benefit out of the system. So trying to exploit the system, the community, or something like this. But we cannot prevent people from having different skills. So as long as they can really produce value, add value, contribute to something that they really believe in, then they should, in my opinion, at least have the possibility to have multiple identities, because it's not damaging any sort of network, community or anything, but it just requires more work from their side. As long as they have the skills to do it and the passion to do it, they should be, I believe, empowered to be more free. That's how I see it. Milena, do you have anything to add on this?
Oh, yeah. In terms of, from a technical point of view, like it's just more natural to have different identities when you have different communities and different platforms, etc. But it's good to be able to kind of have them all together to make sense more for you.
Okay. Let's jump back to Harry with a technical question about using libraries. So you mentioned that libraries should always make sure you use the library key to avoid that exploit. Is this something that developers should be verifying in libraries that they're consuming as well?
Yes, definitely. So when you use a library keyword, it ensures that the contract that is acting as a library is stateless, and that you can't get into a scenario where you're kind of mixing up the state of the calling contract with the consuming contract. So definitely recommend to do that.
Okay. And then over to you, Zak. Who shouldn't get into blockchain?
And I can't think of anyone who shouldn't get into blockchain. I mean, that's an interesting question. if you don't want to make an impact on the world, if you're just happy where you are, you don't have to get into blockchain. But I think there's a place for everyone in blockchain and smart contracts. So come on in.
Awesome. And I'll do a quick follow-up here, since that was a pretty quick answer. I know this question's from me. A lot of blockchain is hype, right? A lot of the products don't exist or don't work, or they're more vision statements than actual working products. How do you figure out what's real in this space?
Yeah, that can be tough. I'd say, understanding things from first principles. I always say that, but seeing that the project is solving a legitimate problem by looking at, the first principles analysis of it. So as an example, when I was looking into Chainlink, I first tried to understand the blockchain Oracle problem. And I saw that this was a legitimate problem and would require lots of engineering effort to solve, and read the white paper and saw that the team was making a very legitimate attempt at solving this problem. And that helped me kind of say, okay, this seems pretty legit. And there's a lot of good projects like that. If you read a kind of overhyped or scammy project, they're going to be usually sparse on the technical details. And when it comes down to the nitty gritty, there's usually some kind of flaw or something that doesn't make sense in their solution. So really just being able to think from first principles and build up and see that the tech is solving a legitimate problem in the world.
Okay. And this question is about identity. What is the state of DAOs, of decentralized autonomous organizations? Like, is this a solved problem that everyone should be doing? Is this like still a fledgling thing that we're going to figure new things out over the next 5 years?
Well, that's like a 5-hour answer, but I believe nobody really figured out final design, let's say, for humans to coordinate and collaborate at best. I believe that the work that DAOs have been making in the last 4 or 5 years has been very important to show the potential of it, but we are very far away from a final model. I believe having, again, shared non-speculative value between communities, so something that you don't do for others in order to accumulate wealth, but you do it for a common goal, and this in exchange will produce wealth for you or social benefits, is a very good step. At the moment, most of the applications related to DAOs have been decentralized finance, which is probably less than 1% of what the DAO can actually be as a coordination engine. But there are other issues to be solved, like, for example, again, Sybil resistance or things connected to how value is allocated in a self-sustainable economical model. So I believe there are many open questions, but building together, coming together for, let's say, trying to build something collectively instead of competing with each other. And we've been seeing this for a very long time in blockchain, from L2 competitions, Ethereum killers, and other things of this. So the same phenomenon is happening with DAOs. There are different communities that are trying to create different standards. There are different identity providers that are creating different standards. And what I believe that the direction we should be leading is instead towards cooperation and standards. As long as we create standards and a measurable value of accounting, then many things that we couldn't possibly think of right now will be possible at one point, and it will be because people will try to build something greater than themselves together. And yeah, that's how we see it. It's an open question, but we are getting there. Milena, what do you think?
Awesome.
Anything to add? All right. Thank you for the question, Stephen.
Yeah. Let's go back to Harry. And this is a question as kind of an industry insider. What should the industry or tooling vendors be doing to minimize these vulnerabilities?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because the vulnerabilities that are there today that we know about, we kind of know how to defend against them, and kind of all of the tooling companies and the businesses building things, we kind of have an awareness and we kind of know what to do. It's the things that we don't know about that that we need to be more mindful of. So we know of the exploits today, but what about the exploits of tomorrow, a year, 5 years, 10 years from now? So I guess the best thing we can do is try and follow the best practices like I talked about, and just have an open mind that there are going to be new things that are going to come about, and try and do the best things that we can today, like I described in the presentation, to kind of try and minimize the effect of these new exploits that are going to occur.
Okay. And then I was originally going to ask this question to Zak about the new learning journey, but I realized we have a bunch of blockchain experts. I'll maybe ask everyone kind of one by one. So the question is, what was your biggest mistake when getting into blockchain? So let's start with you, Harry.
My biggest mistake when getting into blockchain was I was initially focused on kind of some of the permissioned blockchain solutions and trying to learn them and things like that. And then I realized that I much enjoy working in the public permissionless open source space, where there's a lot more innovation being done, a lot more work being done, and it's a lot more rewarding work, as Zak described earlier. So I'd say that's probably the one for myself.
Okay. What about you, Alex?
Well, I believe is a shared mistake that most of us did. When we basically joined blockchain, we saw the possibility for a truly liberal world, or a really disruptive way of doing things from scratch. So initially, probably was very focused on bringing this revolutionary value to others, and I didn't try to work on the educational side. So, for example, filling this gap between newcomers to blockchain, people that are not in blockchain yet, and people that already were. I believe that's where the conversation starts. We need to have a sort of I believe we need to have this bridge between the two parts, and this will keep the conversation open instead of being one-sided.
Awesome. Milena, what was your biggest mistake getting into blockchain?
Yeah, I share Harry's mistake. I started with Hyperledger Fabric, which is very enterprise, very private, and at some point I realized that it's not so much different from being into Web 2, and Web 3, like the actual one, is way more interesting. So yeah.
Awesome. And then Zak, to close us out on this Q&A.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I think for me, it would be, my whole talk, I talked about first principles and understanding, and I think that's good up until a point. I think I wasted a little too much time trying to go into the details of understanding asymmetric cryptography when I should have been building more cool smart contracts. And the minute I started just building, I found that the learning curve was exponential from that point on. So really don't get too caught up in the details. It's important to understand, but just keep building cool things and cool things will come.
Awesome. And a huge thank you again to all of our speakers.